Good evening. Canadians living the legacy of the tainted blood tragedy have waited a long time for this day. Others didn't live to see it. After a 5-year investigation, the RCMP has laid criminal charges, including charges against the Canadian Red Cross and several doctors who were highly placed in Canada's blood distribution system. The RCMP also left the door open for more charges. We have extensive coverage tonight, and it begins with the CBC's Ron Charles.
The RCMP Blood Task Force came together to determine if any charges should come out of one of the worst public health disasters in Canadian history. Today, its dramatic answer.
The RCMP Blood Task Force has laid charges of criminal negligence, causing bodily harm.
The criminal charges also include endangering the public. They are against the Canadian Red Cross Society, a U.S.-based pharmaceutical company, and 4 individuals, including 2 former high-ranking officials from Health Canada.
Charged are Dr. John Ferez, former director of the Bureau of Biologics at the federal government's Health Protection Branch.
Also charged, Dr. Work Boucher, former chief of the Blood Products Division at the Bureau of Biologics, and Dr. Roger Perreault, former director of the Canadian Red Cross Society's blood transfusion system. Perreault's lawyer says his client can't be held criminally responsible for the tainted blood tragedy.
Dr. Perreault is a distinguished medical practitioner, and if his health holds out, he intends to vigorously defend himself against these charges. He is simply not a criminal.
Most of the charges relate to a blood product called Factor VIII, distributed to people with hemophilia. The charges against the Red Cross Society relate to an alleged failure to properly screen blood donors. The Red Cross got out of blood collection and distribution in the late 90s. Its officials say they never expected criminal charges against the organization itself.
We were surprised because, as I said, we made a lot of changes and progress along the way, the restructuring, etc., the transfer, the compensation. We thought the story was over.
The charges were heard loud and clear at the organization that's replaced the Red Cross as the collector of blood.
It makes sure that we are constantly vigilant, constantly ensuring there are safety steps and safety measures in place to prevent this sort of tragedy, this sort of public health crisis from happening again in Canada.
Others are hoping the message resonates through the halls of government departments. Dr. Michelle Brill-Edwards is a former Health Canada official who has become a vocal critic of the way the department treats public safety issues.
I think it sends a very sober message that human life does come above all other consideration, specifically above money.
Armor Pharmaceuticals is a U.S.-based company also facing charges along with one of its former vice presidents. The charges relate to the Factor VIII it sold to Canada. The company calls the charges unfair and unjustified. It will have an opportunity to defend itself against them when all of those charged make their first court appearances early next month. Ron Charles, CBC News, Toronto.
So you've heard what the RCMP has to say, blood collection officials, public health officials. But what about the people who turned to Canada's blood system for help and instead got HIV or hepatitis C? Well, tonight, some of them are having their say, too. Here's the CBC's Laurie Graham.
Watching a live news conference by the
Janet Connors says she's been waiting for this day for almost a decade.
It's been a very long haul.
Back in 1992, Connors and her husband Randy began a very public battle. He was a hemophiliac who contracted AIDS from tainted blood and unknowingly infected her. They led a national movement demanding answers from Canada's Blood Service, looking for someone to be held accountable.
I think we accomplished what we set out to accomplish, which is helping to ensure the future safety of all Canadians. And today, we've realized that goal.
Randy died in 1994. James Love contracted HIV after receiving bad blood 20 years ago. Now he eats all the right foods, trying hard to stay healthy. He says it's about time that someone is finally being held responsible.
This is one of the biggest things that they could do, and one of the most important things is to put names forward and say, yes, these people did this, and that's why this happened.
How you doing? Good.
A sentiment expressed by victims across the country.
It's important because it brings some sort of closure to this whole scandal. It's nice to see the Canadian democracy system working and these charges being laid.
Norman Landry lost 2 sons to tainted blood. He wasn't feeling closure today, just a sense of relief.
It's a bit late for our family, but it might not be, doesn't have to be late for another family.
Joan Lang has hepatitis C, a blood disorder she contracted after receiving tainted blood during an operation back in the 80s. She's still angry, and she says those who've been charged are getting exactly what they deserve.
I think it sends the message that they have to be publicly responsible. If they're in positions of power, they have to use that power with a degree of integrity.
But for many, the fight is not over. There are still potentially 5,000 victims who don't qualify for compensation. Now that people have been criminally charged for what happened, victims say the federal government should compensate everyone. But so far, Ottawa says it won't reconsider its position. Lori Graham, CBC News, Halifax.